Taiwan's leader Tsai Ing-wen warned the world against what she called China's military threats in an international TV interview. Why is she inciting such threats? Does she even have an audience anymore? And Huawei's founder gave his first big international TV interview since his daughter's high-profile arrest. What did he say? And are U.S. efforts to frustrate Huawei's foothold in the 5G race falling flat? Welcome to The Point, an opinion show coming to you from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. The so-called China threat made headlines on CNN. This time it was stoked by the leader of Taiwan. CNN aired an interview with Tsai Ing-wen this week, during which she hyped up the military threats supposedly posed by the mainland against countries in the region or even in the world. If it's Taiwan today, people should ask who's next, she added. Any country in the region, if it no longer wants to submit to the will of China, would face similar military threats, in her words. Tsai's Democratic Progressive Party suffered a catastrophic loss in the local elections last November, winning only 6 of 22 seats altogether, throwing her political career into question. She also told CNN she was ready to run for the leadership again in the 2020 general election, even though polls show her approval rating is lagging far behind other candidates. What is she trying to do by inciting fear about the mainland? There are lots of speculations, maybes and assumptions in the story. Is that professional journalism? Joining me in the studio here are Xu Qingduo, Senior Fellow at the Pangoal Institution, and Victor Gao, Global Councilor at the Asia Society. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. First of all, supposedly this was the very first international TV interview given by the Taiwan leader. Victor, how do you look at the timing? Is there any significance potentially to the timing of this report?
I think this is a very provocative interview. After all, I think Ms. Tsai Ing-wen purely is indulging in fantasy. She treats Taiwan as if Taiwan is an independent country, completely separate from mainland China, for example. In reality, the majority of the people in the world and most of the governments in the world recognize Taiwan is a part of China, and Taiwan and mainland China had a civil war many years ago, and there has been no legal conclusion of that civil war. So the two sides are still, legally speaking, at civil war against each other. So I think she treated Taiwan as if it's independent. In terms of military power...
Not just she, CNN also treated Taiwan as if it is an independent country outside of China.
That's completely wrong and inappropriate, I would say. And we need to really acknowledge the realities on the ground across the two sides of the Taiwan Strait. And mainland China, of course, ever since the beginning of the 1960s, had increasingly powerful military power which can overwhelm Taiwan. But why the Chinese government up to today has not done so? Because I think people here, the government here in mainland China, we want to have a peaceful reunification after all.
Well, in the interview, CNN quoted the Chinese President Xi Jinping's speech at a gathering which marked 40 years of a message to compatriots in Taiwan. And however, let's take a look at exactly what President Xi said, and here you have it. Chinese don't fight Chinese. We're willing to strive for peaceful reunification with utmost sincerity and greatest efforts as peaceful reunification in the best interest of compatriots across the strait as well as the Chinese nation. He said, we make no promise to renounce the use of force and preserve the option of taking all necessary means. However, this does not target compatriots in Taiwan, but the interference of external forces and the very small number of Taiwan independence separatists and their activities. So there you have the exact words of President Xi during a gathering last year on this matter. So why is only this part about the mainland making no promise to renounce the use of force highlighted in this report, Qingduo?
Well, that's that's almost like a expectation or wishful thinking from the Western countries, in particular the United States, to say, oh, China will renounce the use of force for the reunification of the motherland here, mainland, and with Taiwan. In that way, Taiwan will gain its independence probably very soon already. But the thing is, like, if you look at the speech is basically reiterating the purpose of some of the principles stated 40 years ago in 1979. That is like peaceful reunification of the country. It's not about like, oh, we are going to resort to the force or use a military force against Taiwan for the unification. No, and also it is specified only external forces. Here you can understand to make it, clear. It's like most likely the United States. Because the United States is supporting Taiwan with either a new travel act or more military weapons sold to Taiwan, and the extreme small number of separatists within the island. So that has always been consistent, the policy of the
So there's
Beijing.
nothing new, basically, in the message of President Xi when he reiterated that Chinese people don't want to fight Chinese people. However, unfortunately, only that small part in
Yes.
the big, long paragraph was taken as the basis for the CNN report and for Tsai Ing-wen's assertion that there is growing military threat from the mainland.
I think you are right, but if you allow me a couple of minutes just to outline what my view is. I think between 1949 all the way to 1978, China's position was very firm. That is the liberation of Taiwan. So liberation, meaning by armed forces eventually. Now, since Deng Xiaoping became the paramount leader of China, and all the way till President Xi Jinping made his important speech last year, marking the 40th anniversary of that important declaration, for example, message to the Taiwan compatriots, China's position was clear. That is peaceful reunification. We want to have peaceful reunification. And China didn't renounce the use of force. However, there was no very specific time frame as to how do you really achieve peaceful reunification. What President Xi Jinping said last year in his important speech, as far as I can understand, is that he laid out a timetable. He laid out a framework at least, and things need to be done. We cannot keep it open-ended. We cannot let this situation dragging its feet, kicking the can down the road forever. So I think something needs to be done. But it doesn't mean whatever that will happen will be armed forces storming Taiwan or killing people. Xi Jinping is very clear. No target of Taiwan civilians at all. Only targeting those who want to promote Taiwan independence. These will be the enemies of the Chinese nation.
Some of the evidence that was quoted by this report was the more frequent military exercises in recent years on the mainland side, potentially warning as a warning sign to anybody who might have any separatist intentions. And on that basis, I was saying that, this is a threat, and if they're targeting us in Taiwan today, who would be next? What do you think is the ultimate reason for the tension in recent years across the Taiwan Strait? Is it the mainland just without any reason, okay, we are going to step up military pressure on the other side? Qingduo.
That's a good question, actually. Few people, obviously, internationally, especially common readers of CNN, common viewers of CNN, probably they don't understand. Over the past 2 years, actually, we're seeing growing tension across the Taiwan Straits. And why? This is a good question. 2016, Tsai Ing-wen was elected to be the leader of Taiwan. Remember, her party, DPP, is approved independence. In the English version, they call it in the Western reports, separatist intention to this party. So, when she was elected, she basically rescinded and gave up this the consensus, which is the fundamental foundation for this cross-strait relationship of peace and stability.
There is only one China.
We call it 1992 consensus. That's only one China. And because of her insistence and her practice, that's why you see growing tensions between the two sides.
And Tsai Ing-wen supposedly also has this logic that if they're threatening us, they might be threatening you tomorrow. Victor?
That's exactly why I said Ms. Tsai Ing-wen is indulging in fantasy and miscompounding the whole situation. Why? China always said Taiwan is part of China. And most people in Taiwan also said that Taiwan is part of China. The difference is as to which part really represents China. That's the big debate. Now, I think China does not have claim against any other country in this part of the world or any other country in the whole world. So these two situations that are confounded into one by Tsai Ing-wen are completely different in terms of legal categorization.
Why is she trying to make people fear of the intention of
I think she's stoking this fear of China threat. This is a wrong concept.
To act as a kind of victim, to get more sympathy from the international, from the American society? Victor?
My concern is that there are indeed people in the United States who want to use Taiwan as a pawn in their effort to derail China's development. So they want to make sure, first of all, the status quo, that is the two sides being kept apart, is not changed. And then secondly, whenever they can, they want to pour more fuel onto the fire. That's why they are selling more weapons, more sophisticated weapons, and also making sure that the U.S. government officials, including military officials, can visit Taiwan, for example. They want to create a status quo whereby Taiwan is independent, separate country.
Is the American media, such as CNN, completely neutral on this?
No, obviously not. And I think if it's neutral, they would describe the situation differently, because the whole story, if you listen to it, if you read the story, basically the story treated Taiwan is like another country. No, if you look at the U.S. official policy, they agreed to the One China principle, which is also the foundation of China-U.S. relationship. And there's only one China, and Beijing represents the legitimate China.
Yeah, if you read the story, you would feel as if Taiwan is a completely different country next to China. Let's remind our readers, there is no Taiwan flag in front of the UN building or any other UN organizations where only sovereign countries are members. So I think that is potentially very misleading. And then we were talking about some people in the United States who want to use the Taiwan card. A group of U.S. lawmakers led by Marco Rubio has asked U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to invite Tsai Ing-wen to address a joint meeting of the U.S. Congress. I understand at this moment that Taiwan has the ears of Washington, but not Beijing, especially on the issue of on such an important issue. What could be the potential consequence if such asymmetry of information is even further widened, Victor?
Well, I think in the United States today, there is an increasing tendency of treating China as if China is an adversary or rival or even enemy of the United States. The reality is far from this at all. China is not an enemy. Chinese people are not enemies of the American people. We want to have peace and good relations with the United States. However, there are these politicians who want to really make a lot of trouble, who really want to increase the antagonism between China and the United States, and for them, Taiwan is a card, Taiwan is a pawn. So if Ms. Tsai Ing-wen really wants to become a pawn of the United States, that will be what she will be dealt with eventually. That's exactly what President Xi Jinping said in his speech. The use of force will be targeting those select people, very small number, in number, who will really push for Taiwan independence. And I don't think the United States want to caught in this crossfire between mainland China and Taiwan if, for example, real problems or real tensions further escalate.
That would be truly unfortunate, and I hope that people need to understand exactly what was said from the mainland on such important matters. What is the stance of the Chinese mainland on this matter, and really not be led by partial stories such as the one we have seen on CNN. Many thanks to Xu Qingduo, Senior Fellow at the Pangoal Institution, and Victor Gao, Global Councillor at the Asia Society.